was Izzo coming from? That one baffles me.
I think that's a Dan Gilbert. I think that's a Dan Gilbert thing. I really do.
He's already a millionaire.
Right.
He's going to be ranked first, second, third, or fourth in the preseason rankings next year. It's probably his best chance to win another crown since he had Cleves. He'd have to uplift his family. He's got a daughter in high school.
Sure.
He's a fixture up there for as long as he wants to continue to coach. And yeah, the money, but when there's no guarantee that LeBron James will be with this team, certainly not more than 3 years from now. So I didn't get it.
I think from Tom Izzo's standpoint, it's the flirtation. You know, it's going out with a pretty girl. And I think for Tom, it was smart of him not to talk a lot about it, not to sit back and make a lot of outlandish comments about it, not to even really divulge even to the kids at that camp the other day of what direction he was going to go. But I never really looked at it as a serious – I looked at it from the standpoint of the Cavs would have loved it. At least Dan Gilbert would have loved it. But I looked at it from Tom Izzo's standpoint of thinking – Michigan State's his home. It's the best place for him. And I think he is going to use that as leverage to, at the end of the day, become the lifetime coach of that organization like a Joe Paterno of Penn State in football. And I think it's a right move for him. I never looked at it like Cleveland was a real fit for him. I think it would have been a fish out of water. And I love all these people. Oh, we'll look at Reggie Theus and look at, Floyd and all these guys that came out of college and didn't do well in the pros. Well, nobody had LeBron James. If he gets LeBron James, the whole equation changes for Tom Izzo. But I think he looked at it like, I can't get a hold of LeBron. I'm making a lot of money already at Michigan State. I might win another national championship, which puts me in a statue in front of the building, if you will. Why would I want to take that chance? It's a very, very risky proposition for him to have come to the NBA.
I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier about LeBron selling his shoes in all the cities,
right.
And then that when it's out that that there's going to be a lot of coaches that want to coach here.
Right.
So are you saying that the Cavs aren't going to hire a coach now that the Izzo thing has fallen through until LeBron does go public and says he's going to stay 3 more years?
I think you'll see some names, but I think it's the right move if they don't. I think you'll see Byron Scott's name come up again now as the front runner. I think Mike Woodson's name, which has already been brought up, I apologize, and Jeff Van Gundy's name's been brought up. I think at the end of the day, if the Cavaliers do this the right way, I think it's either you're all in or you're not. If LeBron comes back, you're going to have guys knocking on the door 24/7. If LeBron doesn't come back, sure, there's guys that are always going to want the position of an NBA head coaching spot. That goes without saying. But I think that obviously that window closes a lot on certain names. And I think also with a guy like Byron Scott, he's going to wait to see what Phil Jackson does. And I think that's smart on Byron Scott's part. I don't think the guys right now are the name guys that the Cavaliers maybe have in mind are going to make a commitment to this franchise, and rightfully so, until their top player decides what he's going to do. Because realistically, if you're a coach and you have an opportunity to coach the Lakers or coach the Cavs, and the Lakers are maybe about to win another championship or at least go to 7 games with Boston, or the Cavaliers, who might be losing their biggest superstar, and you may go from 20,000 strong every night to 5 again like they were before LeBron came here, what would you do? I would be intelligent about it and wait. I think it's a waiting out process now. You'll hear names, and you'll hear maybe Chris Grant will talk to a couple guys here and there, but I just don't think at the end of the day that it would be smart for a guy to commit to this job until they know what LeBron's going to do.
If Jackson retires or doesn't renew with the Lakers, then he's retired. Do you agree?
Yeah, I don't think I don't know where else he would go. I mean, obviously Chicago's already got their guy in place, and where else? There's no other fit for Jackson.
Okay, if he doesn't renew, and I think he won't renew because Bus wants to cut his salary big time.
Right,
there.
And I think that relationship is soured.
And what more? With Perkins going down, I think they're going to beat Boston.
I do too. I really do.
So
Kobe cements his legacy.
What a beautiful way for Jackson to go out. So let's assume that plays out. Do you not agree that it's Byron Scott as the heir apparent over Brian Shaw?
Correct. That's why I say he should wait. Yeah.
Does that make Shaw a player for the Cavs?
Yeah, I do think that is the case, and that name, I've heard that name a couple times too. The name, of course, that I just don't understand is Mike Woodson. He wasn't exactly he was able to get Atlanta to a couple of opportunities, but they never made any impact in the playoffs whatsoever. And I think that's why. I mean, they won a series last year before the Cavs blew them out, and this year they just weren't any competition. So I think that's why I think what's going to happen with this job is you're going to see the Lakers Celtics series play out tomorrow night. And again, if the Lakers go in that direction of getting rid of Phil, I think Byron Scott goes there. I think Byron Shaw definitely becomes a candidate for this position, whether LeBron James is here or not. Or like I said, I think the dark horse is Van Gundy. I think Van Gundy will definitely, even though he's already said he's not going to do it, I just think that there's something in the back of his head that says, would I pass up an opportunity to coach LeBron James for a couple of years?
Is Mike Brown going to get a new gig?
I don't think as a head coach.
Now that Johnson's got the Nets.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think as a head coach, I think he'll go somewhere as an assistant for a couple years, try to rebuild himself up. And you know what? He'll get a gig somewhere. Let's put it this way. If you switch sports, if Eric Wedge is going to get a managerial job with one playoff appearance in 7 years, how come Mike Brown not get a job somewhere? I just think that's – and the NBA is that revolving door of coaches like we talked about, so he'll get a job somewhere.
If LeBron renews for 3 more years with the Cavs, how do we surround him with better talent than what we've had these last 2 years with the Caps?
The cap space being what it is.
What it is.
You might be stuck in some regard because there really isn't a lot of maneuverability on this team right now. There just isn't. I mean, will Shaq come at $3 million? Maybe. I think he'd be smart too, but I don't know if he will. What do you do with some of these? I've heard the rumors of Delonte getting traded, of Mo getting looked at out on the open market, but I mean, you have, because of what you've tried to accomplish the last 2 years in selling out all or nothing, you have pretty much put yourself in a corner of saying, we can't do a lot maneuver-wise. But at the same time, anytime you have a LeBron James on your roster, there's always going to be that opportunity to win. And I think that is what he brings to the organization. Now the question will be, does he need that many guys around him? Does he need a Shaq, a Mo, a Delonte, an Andy? Or is it just a case of maybe being in a different system that gives his team a little more of the energy and maybe a little bit more of the focus that they need that they've obviously lost the last 2 years in the playoffs?
Wow. But if they weren't good enough with the best records the last 2 years to beat Orlando,
but look at Boston. I mean, they didn't have the best record, and it's sometimes to me.
But
Bruce,
we thought we did have the best team the last 2 years.
Well,
Matt.
that was our fault. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's not the best team.
But how are we going to win it if we don't have at least as good a talent, if not better talent, than what we had this? Here. The Cavs were better the year after they were swept by San Antonio in 4 straight games.
Correct.
And then they were better the next season, which followed the year we were eliminated by Boston.
In the second round.
Right. And then I thought they were a better team this year, even though they didn't have as good a record as the team the year before, personnel-wise. So how can they how can they exceed these?
Well, here's the thing. I think when you get in the playoffs, it's all about coaching. There's a large portion of coaching that when you get in the playoffs, if you get out coached, and Mike Brown got out coached the last 2 years, there's no doubt about it. That was mistake number one. And number two, I think Mike made a mistake down the stretch. I really do. And I know this is hindsight being 20/20. I think sitting the guys as much as he did the last 2 weeks, I think that they were a little flat going into the playoffs. I really do. And I know that, and of course that they force-fed Shaq in when the playoffs started. When you get into the playoffs, just like in baseball or more so even in football when it's one game, but when you get into baseball, hockey, or basketball, the margin of error really shrinks a lot. And you're not taking on the same teams that you're taking on in the regular season, like the New Jerseys and the Washingtons and the Clippers, and teams that you can blow out by 30, 40 points, and you can dance and have your fun and be doing all your saluting and everything like that. When you get into playoffs, the margin of error is very small. And I think last year when they blew out New Jersey, and then of course Detroit rather, and then of course Atlanta before they got to Orlando, I think that team really, to me, was the team that was gonna make it. I think Orlando winning that first game here last year was an absolute shock. I think Boston winning the first game here was an absolute shock, winning the second game here rather was an absolute shock to them. And I think they weren't prepared mentally. And I think a lot of that is coaching. And as much as Mike Brown did a nice job in different parts managing this team, I think when it came down to X's and O's in the playoffs, he was outcoached by Doc Rivers and he was outcoached by Van Gundy last year.
But how do you explain LeBron and the team's play in games 4, 5, and 6?
Flat. They were not motivated. And I think that the rotation was off. I think that rotation with Hickson not playing as much as he should have was off, and I think the rotation and let's face it, Mo Williams again did not have a great playoffs. Delonte West was flat during parts of the playoffs. You can't put it solely on LeBron. LeBron did not play well. There was no question about it. But guys like Delonte, Mo, even to a certain extent, Andy didn't have the same energy as he had during parts of the regular season. Shaquille was not the same player as he was during parts of the regular season.
And he was coming off the injury.
I mean, again, and again.
Jamison and him, it looked like they never played together before in their lives, which they hadn't.
You're right. And that's that force feeding of the system of Mike Brown saying, we got Shaquille O'Neal for this time of the year. Well, what he forgot is they really got him for Dwight Howard. They didn't get him for Perkins and those guys against Boston.